get rid of the waste products, that is excretion is the primary function. আমরা তাই ছোটবেলা থেকে পড়ে এসেছি, this is excretion. But kidney এখন আমরা পড়বো kidney has excretory functions and along with excretion it performs other functions, তাই তো? So what may be the other functions of the kidney? Tell me any at least one. আমরা whatever we have this, hey aste maintain silent, maintain proper decorum, তারপর ক্লাস করো। সাইলেন্ট হলে তবে ক্লাস শুরু করবে। So tell me one, anyone? Yes, that they maintain that is one, but what comes immediately? Excretion of what comes immediately? No, আমরা যা যা পড়েছি pH, yes pH আমরা পড়েছি, pH discussion general physiology হয়েছে। Kidney is one of the organs, very important organs. Acid base balance এর ক্ষেত্রে kidney is very very important. But another one, endocrine function, that is আমরা কি কোথায় পড়েছি? এরিথ্রোপয়েটিন is secreted, আমরা এরিথ্রোপয়েটিন পড়েছি হচ্ছে হিমাটোফিজিওলজিতে, যেখানে ব্লাড পড়তে গিয়ে পড়েছি। Except erythropoietin, any other endocrine? Aldosterone. Aldosterone is not secreted from the kidney. Renin and calcitriol, vitamin D, calcitriol, and pH, acid base balance. So the kidney, actually these are two courses, these are just to begin with. Renal physiology, just to begin with, read the course. These have been written, these courses have been mentioned in a book, in one of the textbooks of physiology, that means standard textbooks of physiology. They almost homeostasis, whatever we know as homeostasis, a lot of that homeostasis er ei puro jinishta is dependent on the kidney. Homeostasis ki maintenance of the internal milieu, ekdom general physiology, I think maybe the first class, general physiology first class homeostasis tar ei je power of adaptation, internal environment maintain kora, eta purotai hocche. So two quotes by two different persons. Starling er, where have you got the name of Starling? Thanks Starling. So Starling er ekta quote ar Homer W. Smith er ekta quote, two different physicians of almost the similar same era, 20th century te dujoner duto quote, that maintenance of homeostasis, se pH balance kori hok, endocrine function kori, setao everything is a part of the maintenance of the internal atmosphere of the body, that is the internal milieu. So bolche kidneys even failing for a certain time, 7 din acute kidney injury, 7 din kidney কাজ করছে না, mental status may be disturbed, waste products are not getting eliminated, and another is liver ও তাই তো, liver ও তাই, ammonia. So if they build up hepatic encephalopathy, এখনো সেই কথাগুলো আসেনি anyway. Hepatic encephalopathy, have you heard the term during GI physiology? Hepatic encephalopathy. এখন NMC is also encouraging that কিছু clinical discussion, clinical orientation হবে during the first year classes also. Anyway, so the kidneys has a similar role, and mental integrity is also disturbed, kidneys functioning properly, jeta Dr. Smith bolechilen. So this is just to start with, just say introduction. So how do the kidneys maintain an homeostasis or multiple functions of the kidneys? Almost the same thing. So not only the excretory function but the non-excretory functions of the kidneys as well. So maintenance of acid base balance, water salt balance, don't write it as a water salt balance, this is from I think one book, nursing textbook or something. So light electrolyte balance, you don't write, at least as MBBS students, electrolyte balance, okay, sodium, potassium, regulation of water and electrolyte balances, regulation of body fluid osmolality and electrolyte concentrations, acid base balance. Also kidneys themselves work, their function varies if blood pressure is not controlled, but it itself again has a role in maintaining blood pressure as well. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, what someone was telling us, aldosterone is not secreted from the kidney, but renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, this involves aldosterone and involves renin, which is secreted from the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So, that system maintenance of arterial pressure is dependent on the kidneys, hormones, and to some extent we may not mention this gluconeogenesis, leave that anyway. The others are very important. First one is excretion, excrete waste products, but in addition to that or subsequent to that or as a result of that, maintenance of internal milieu homeostasis and the other functions. So, if we go by the competencies, just have a look at the competencies today. What if you have not seen yet, what are the, so any system, just a little functional anatomy we have to know. So, as in the adrenal has not been done anyway, we have mentioned many times that some organs, their anatomy is described as the outer part, inner part. Outer part is called the cortex, inner part is called the medulla. So, if we make a hemisection of the kidney, half section, so the structures will be visible. Has it been yet shown in the anatomy dissection classes or any specimen or something where you have seen the structures? What is a lobe? What is a lobule? How do we define lobule? So, you have seen kidney in the anatomy dissection classes. So, what is a lobe? Renal lobe, if you have seen. We mention the structures. Which part is called a lobe? Okay, anyway, the gross is, so from the kidney, whatever waste products are drained. So, the formation of urine, after the formation of urine, so the basic unit of kidney is the nephron. After the formation of urine, it passes to the ureter, to the urinary bladder, and from the ureter, the origin of the ureter, and where from the blood vessels are either entering. So, what is entering? Renal artery, which is, I think as far as I remember, you will tell me, direct branch of the abdominal aorta, one direct lateral branch of the abdominal aorta. Renal artery is entering through the and renal vein is leaving. That region is called the hilum, as well as one region is defined as the renal sinus. It has some fatty tissue is there, and wherever these structures, all these, the opening of the pelvis. So, the pelvis is drained by 2 or 3 what we call major calyces, C-A-L-Y-X calyx, and one major calyx is formed by different few minor calyx, and that drains into the pelvis of the ureter, then drains the ureter. So, renal artery, renal vein, pelvis, cortex, inner part is called the medulla. Now, at the junction of the cortex and medulla, there are some various, so many conical structures are these structures form like a cone. So, this conical structure is called a pyramid. Each conical structure is called a pyramid, and ultimately they are draining into the pelvis, duct of Bellini, columns of Bartin. All these are there, as you have seen the kidney is already known, they are draining into the ureter, and this hilus or the hilum is the region through which the renal artery enters, renal vein and ureter leaves. So, this is the system. So, we can define the renal lobe as just the pyramid, we may call the lobe pyramid, but the pyramid is say at the base of the pyramid is at the corticomedullary junction. So, along with the above lying cortex, it is called a lobe. Essentially, it is the pyramid and lobe, we can say essentially it is the same, maybe functionally, but along with the cortex anatomically, it is called the lobe. But within a cortex, so single medullary ray. So, within the cortex, single medullary ray part of the lobe is called the lobule. A single medullary ray with adjacent cortex, that is the lobule. Pyramid with adjacent cortex is the lobe, but a single medullary ray, that is medullary ray means that is present in the medulla. So, this part. So, within this whole part, this is the pyramid, along with this cortex is the lobe. But if we consider a single medullary ray along with its cortical part, that is the lobule. So, lobule is a part of the lobe. So, lobule is as if nephron is a functional unit, as we know. So, we can say that actually the functional unit is the lobule. So, it may have more than one, it has more than one nephron. So, nephron is a smaller unit, but nephron, some nephrons together with their collecting duct, one medullary ray forms the renal lobule. So these terms will be getting time to time when you just discuss. So this renal lobule will get time to time. So we have to understand that what part we are talking about. So what is labeled as P? These are the pyramids, the conical structures. So this is the same thing. The picture is not very good. So the renal artery, same thing. The lobes, the arteries, and these blood vessels are shown. So what are the branches of the renal artery? How does the renal artery branch? They form segmental arteries. So what are the segmental arteries? First, the renal artery will form interlobar. So as the renal artery enters from here, then interlobar. That means they will go in between. You know the difference between inter and intra by now. So interlobar means in between the lobes, and interlobular means in between the lobules. Between the interlobar and interlobular are the arcuate arteries. That means interlobar branches into arcuates, arcuates branches into interlobular. Interlobular, then comes from the interlobular forms the afferent arteriole, and afferent arteriole forms the glomerular capillary. So the unit of nephron, glomerular capillary surrounded by bibands capsule, and the loop of, the tubule, the loop of Henle, before that the proximal tubule, distal tubule, in between them the loop of Henle. Okay, these things, these names you know. So the internal, after the interlobular arteries is the afferent arteriole. Afferent arteriole is forming the tuft of the glomerular capillaries, and that glomerular capillaries is, then again this tuft of capillaries forming the efferent arteriole. So what is the, this tuft of capillaries is like, what is the difference between with the other parts, with the most of the circulation, that arteries form capillaries, capillaries form veins, but here at both ends of the capillaries are arteries. So efferent arteriole is also arteries, that means artery, smaller artery, efferent arteriole is also artery. So a tuft of capillaries whose the two ends, one end is artery in all cases, other end should be vein, but here it is artery, then tuft of capillaries, then again artery. So how we are defined, then why we are calling it capillaries? Yes, anatomically that is the reason, and functionally also it serves like capillaries. And the functional part, or the functional anatomical, functionally, which is related to its function, anatomical thing is that it is called as fenestrated. There are fenestrations in the capillaries because it has to filter. So filtration is the main role. So these are fenestrated capillaries, arteriole, afferent arteriole, tuft of capillaries, efferent arteriole, and then that will ultimately form the venous system. From the efferent arteriole, what forms we will see. We will just see from the efferent arteriole what is formed. So the efferent arteriole is coming out, and these long vessels, which is shown in the picture as red colored one, they are known as the vasa recta. Vasa recta, vessels which are straight. Recta means straight. Vasa recta. These straight vessels are accompanying the long loops of Henle. Long loops of Henle are present not in all nephrons, in the juxtamedullary nephrons. Juxtamedullary nephrons are those long, they are constitute how much? That means mostly, yes, 15 to max 10 to 12 to 15% of the nephrons are the juxtamedullary nephrons. Rest are cortical nephrons. So the cortical nephrons, if we take this picture, shows the difference between cortical nephron and juxtamedullary nephrons. If we divide again into cortex and medulla, cortex, some part is told as the outer medulla and the inner medulla. So the small glomerulus, short loops of Henle, and this loop of Henle is entering the outer part of the medulla but does not go into the inner part, but the long loops of Henle in the juxtamedullary nephrons, which are 15% of the nephrons, they are the goes inside the inner part of the medulla. So the parts of the medulla are proximal, parts of the tubule of the nephron are proximal, convoluted tubule, then proximal straight tubule, then descending thin limb, then ascending thin limb, then thick ascending limb, then it goes to the distal tubule. So, some authors are writing between that there is something called the connecting tubule which connects it to the collecting duct and all. Collecting duct is actually not a part of the nephron itself. Few nephrons drain into a single collecting duct. So, the connecting tubule, some authors are writing is connecting tubule, all the nephrons connecting tubule collects to that common collecting duct. If in case of the juxtamedullary nephron, the descending thin limb, then the ascending thin limb is very prominent. What is the difference with the cortical nephron? Firstly, the glomerulus is lying above, means almost near the corticomedullary junction in juxtamedullary nephrons, but in case of the cortical nephrons, glomerulus is high above in the cortex, glomerulus. And the thin ascending limb, that means after the thin descending limb, the loop of Henle, thin ascending limb is more or less not present or very short thin ascending limb. From the descending limb, it passes on to the thick ascending limb, thick part of the ascending limb. That is the difference between the cortical nephron and the juxtamedullary nephron anatomically. Region is the macula densa. We will discuss about the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Macula densa, where is the region present? Where the thick ascending limb and connecting to the distal tubule, it meets it is near the glomerulus of the same nephron. That region, there are specialized cells which are called the macula densa. So, see this thick descending limb, then loop of Henle, thin ascending limb, thick ascending limb. This thin ascending limb is very short, here it almost can't be seen. Can you identify this? There are different colors. Can you identify this green part where the red dot is on now? This is the thin ascending limb of the juxtamedullary nephron. But in case of cortical nephron, this is very short. Some authors are even not showing it, that there is no thin ascending limb as such, that this descending limb passes on to the ascending limb. So, distal tubule usually does not have, it is not, distal straight tubule is not written. Some authors are writing connecting tubule are connecting to this thick ascending limb connecting to the distal tubule, then connecting tubule to the collecting duct. But proximal tubule, we have two parts, proximal convoluted tubule and then the proximal straight tubule which connects to the descending thin limb of the loop of the Henle's. Now, these long vessels, vasa recta, and allowing them accompanying veins, these long vessels are found in case of only the juxtamedullary nephrons, not in the case of the cortical nephrons. So, again just quick revision, same things, capsule, the capsule of the kidney, inner outer cortex, inner medulla, pyramids along with the cortex, conical structures are called the pyramids, along with the cortex it forms the lobe, and in the medullary rays, single medullary rays consisting of some nephrons and their collecting ducts. This is may be considered a functional unit. This is the lobule. So, the lobe versus the lobule, and kidney drains into the ureter. The part through which the renal artery enters, renal vein and ureter leaves is the hilum, and the renal sinus is that accompanying part along with some fatty tissue is also there, that is the renal sinus. So, I think more needed in answering in the anatomy paper, juxtamedullary glomerulus. So, this is one juxtamedullary glomerulus of the juxtamedullary nephron, it is labeled as, so it is near the corticomedullary junction, but in case of a cortical nephron, the glomerulus is situated high, means we should not call high, in the outer part, more towards the, that means the outer part of even of the outer part of the cortex. So, these are the blood vessels, interlobar, then interlobular, before that arcuate arteries, interlobular arteries are draining into the not draining, sorry, they are forming the afferent arteriole, then the tuft of glomerular capillaries, then the efferent arteriole, which now forms the peritubular capillaries. These vasa recta are also called, these called are peritubular capillaries of the juxtamedullary vasa recta in the juxtamedullary nephron. So these will help, or these have a role in concentrating, nephron vasa recta, and these are called these peritubular capillaries in case of the juxtamedullary. Same thing, peritubular capillaries will call the vasa recta, and these have role in this urine concentration. These have a role to play. So whatever we are discussing here, not the detailed anatomy but the functional anatomy. So these glomerular base, this capillary has fenestration, and what are there at the base of the, or the, you should not say base, you have heard of the, in different organs you have heard of the parietal layer and the visceral layer, you have seen the pleura, lungs you have seen in anatomy, so pleura. So as if there are specialized cells called podocytes, which as if from the base of this glomerular capillaries, as if they form the visceral layer of the capillary, and in between them there are gaps. So if you see, this is the glomerular basement membrane. So there are the podocytes, cell body, and there are spaces, they are called the subpodocyte space. Ultimately, what are they helping in? Fenestations. What are they helping in? These have the role in fenestration, so role in filtration. So this specialized structure. So slit diaphragm, this filtration slit, the endothelial cell is there, endothelium. So the capillary endothelial cell is there. So whatever is there in the other capillaries, lycocalyx and all. So there, these are fenestration. These are the basement membrane, and this podocyte foot process as if they form the visceral layer of the glomerular capillaries. And this whole as a glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule whole is called the renal, it is called as the renal corpuscle. What is the term corpuscle come from? We have heard also, this in blood cells are called red blood corpuscles, white blood corpuscles. Why? What is the origin of the term corpuscle? Corpuscles means small rounded bodies. It is also, in case of the renal corpuscle, it is also termed as the what body? Malpighian body. It is after the name of, again, some person who named it, the Malpighian body. So this, see here it is more clear, afferent arteriole making the glomerular tuft of capillaries. This is the efferent arteriole. This glomerular tuft of capillaries is surrounded by the foot process of podocytes. This is single, showing it as a large one. This is the capillary lumen where the blood is there, arterial blood is there, and these are the foot processes of the podocytes. Okay. So in these they have named, these are the macula densa cells where afferent arteriole is meeting the efferent arteriole, and in the same region where the macula densa cells forms, what we just told, same nephron tubule is going and meeting its, not meeting means not anatomically meeting, near its glomerulus, not draining into the glomerulus obviously, it is near the glomerulus of the, or the tuft of, glomerular tuft of capillaries of the same nephron, the tubule is going. So these, why I am repeating this, because these, when we will discuss the juxtaglomerular apparatus and the functions, we will discuss the layers. So these things will again be relevant, very relevant. That is, you have to understand in one line that this structure is present in this region, and what are the types of epithelial that we have still not come to at time to it, coming to it. So this structure is important. This is what is some anatomy of the kidney, the differences with maybe some other organs. Where does the, which part of the tubule is starting and ending where, and what are the types of cells that we are coming to. These have to be learned before actual functions of the, how the urine is formed. So these things, before going into these things have to be clear. That's why I am repeating it. So in this diagram you can see this again, the podocytes. This is the basal lamina and these are the podocytes. So in the juxtaglomerular, we will discuss the juxtaglomerular apparatus separately, as it is written as a separate competency number is given. So what is the function? Just in short we will discuss the next day. So juxtaglomerular apparatus consists of the mesangial cells, the mesangial cells, that is the extraglomerular cells, juxtaglomerular cells and the macula densa cells. Now the macula densa cells are most near to that where the same tubule is coming near its the glomerulus of the same nephron. So again here also you can see same thing, these podocytes, visceral layer of Bowman's capsule and parietal layer, as if the podocytes themselves are forming the visceral layer of the Bowman's capsule. Urine is filtered from here, so they have named this the urinary pole. This is again draining through the ureter. So this part, this is how the podocytes are formed embryologically. This is from very standard again textbook of physiology, how they are more of embryology here in the upper one, but here it is shown. So this is the thick ascending limb. See again the thick ascending limb, here you can see better. This you can efferent arteriole. So the thick ascending limb is coming and toward near the glomerulus of the own capillaries, own nephron, the same nephron, not own, same nephron. So that is, there are the macula densa cells. Again different capillaries with all the podocyte layering membrane in this diagram. Okay, and podocytes have food processes. Sometimes they are called, sometimes not. They are called pseudopodia. So for sometimes they are called, means some authors are food, instead of writing food processes, writing pseudopodia. They are membranes. I think it is seen in this diagram. Podocyte cell body and some these processes. These are like the pseudopodia. So this is the, what are the functions of different these cells which we have just mentioned. So mesangial cell conduction, angiotensin 2 will discuss with the juxtaglomerular nephros, renal angiotensin, RAAS system. So that we will discuss. Mesangial cells, they are so called because they have a matrix and they contain like connective tissues, collagen, laminin, these things are there. Endothelium, capillary endothelium, as in other endothelium, they are the factors which are causing the vasoconstriction. Efferent and efferent, what will happen if these are related to the function? If they are if the efferent arteriole is constricted, then what will happen? So the filtration will be hampered because the efferent arteriole is constricted. So whatever are entering the kidney for the filtration, through the renal artery, that filtration will be hampered. But efferent arteriole is constricted up to a certain degree, filtration, that means the filtration rate may increase. We will discuss the factors affecting when we will discuss the glomerular filtration rate. So just from the anatomical knowledge, you can just say efferent arteriole increase forming the capillaries and then again efferent arteriole. So endothelium, so causing both vasoconstriction of both efferent and efferent, but the effects will be different. Efferent arteriole, if constriction is there, then obviously filtration will be hampered. So that is the relation between this anatomy and the functions, which will be the functional part, which will be discussing. In some glomerular diseases, this endothelin increases, both arteries will be constricted, but at least it is obvious that in case of constriction of the efferent arteriole, filtration would be hampered. Sometimes in inflammatory reaction, cytokines, some cytokines which we have mentioned about cytokines, what are they? Small proteins in immunity. So some cytokines are produced by mesangial cells as well. And what we mentioned, where did you hear of this mesangial cells in immunity? In the reticuloendothelial system. So Kupffer cells in the liver, these are examples. In the reticular endothelial system, some authors are mentioning the glomerular mesangial cells as a part of the immunity cells. So the reticuloendothelial system, it is spread widely in the body in different parts. So in the kidney, some authors are mentioning glomerular capillary cells, glomerular mesangial cells, these mesangial cells as the part of the reticuloendothelial system as well. There are some cytoskeletal contractile proteins, obviously there will be. This is the, again, see here it can be seen, macula densa is that part, those cells nearest to the, where this thick ascending limb, loop of Henle, LH, this LH is loop of Henle, thick ascending limb is going and meeting, not meeting again, it is not draining. So it is near the glomerular capillaries or the afferent and efferent arterioles of the same nephron. So these cells are called the macula densa. Now they are going here, they have shown directly to the collecting duct, but the most consensus is now one nephron does not, a single collecting duct, a collecting duct is not draining only one nephron, it is connected to different nephrons, and that part which connects it is called the connecting tubule, connecting part of the tubule. So the tubule is the part of the nephron, but duct is not a part of the nephron, which is the consensus now. So collecting duct is not the part of the only that nephron. So it is draining many nephrons, and many nephrons along with collecting duct and one single medullary relay that forms the renal lobe or the lobule. Collecting duct along with the draining nephrons. So single medullary relay within the pyramid, this is the lobe or the lobule, this is the lobule, and the lobe is the whole pyramid along with its associated cortex. So these will go into the epithelial cells of the different types of this in the different parts of the collecting tubules, without mentioning that is again related to the functions. So just we have mentioned this proximal convoluted tubule, proximal straight tubule, descending thin limb, ascending thin limb, thick ascending limb. The types of cells are different. We will mention about the principal cells and intercalated cells before going into the functional, these functions of this, how the urine is concentrated, how concentrated urine is formed. We have to discuss this, the types of cells, because they are and the nature of the cells, these are determining the functions of the cells and the functions of the nephron and the kidney as a whole. So we have to discuss these types of cells before going into the functional part, and we have to discuss the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So whatever we have read until now, to understand the functions, again I am repeating, you have to have an idea, that is, you have to have the idea whenever those will be mentioned, at that time it cannot be repeated, the whole thing. So you make a clear picture of the anatomy. You have seen the kidney in the anatomy classes. So clear picture of this functional anatomy before the next discussion. So read this part, okay, this functional anatomy, and it also includes the juxtaglomerular apparatus, but as they have mentioned as it as separate competency, we will just mention it separately next day.